Nearly a week after the Women's March, which took place in many major cities throughout the country, thousands of women and men got together to march in a pro-life protest in D.C. Now, this is an annual protest that takes place, and for the first time ever, the vice president decided to show up and speak to the crowd. Now, I want to give you some more details on what the people who went to this protest want specifically, but before I do so, let's hear from our Vice President, Mike Pence.
Our Supreme Court turned away from the first of these timeless ideals. But today, 3 generations hence, because of all of you and the many thousands who stand with us in marches like this all across the nation, life is winning again in America.
So, look, as you read into the story and you read into what conservatives want and what Mike Pence and Donald Trump are likely to do, it is very worrying for those who want to protect reproductive rights. But let me give you some more details. So Mike Pence apparently promised that President Trump would not only end federal funding for abortions and abortion providers, he would name a Supreme Court justice who would, quote, uphold the God-given liberties enshrined in the Constitution. So I'm going to stop for a second and give you some details about what's not accurate in that statement. So first of all, federal money, taxpayer money, does not go toward abortions. In fact, there's something known as the Hyde Amendment, which literally bans that from happening. So it's usually a talking point that you hear from Republican or conservative lawmakers, and they intentionally use that type of language to mislead you, to think that if you are someone who has some moral issue with reproductive rights, well, you should be worried because your taxpayer money is going to abortions. It is not. Now, does some of that money go to organizations that provide abortion as one of the many things they do? Yes. However, that money is not allowed to be used for abortion specifically, and organizations like Planned Parenthood get audited on a regular basis just to ensure that our taxpayer money doesn't go toward abortion. So I want to be clear about that. Let me give you more details. Now, Donald Trump, of course, tweeted after these protests took place, and he said, the March for Life is so important. To all of you marching, you have my full support.
Shouldn't he be using the president's, the POTUS Twitter account at this point?
No, they lock him out during daylight hours. They lock him out. Twilight hours. No, twilight hours. Yeah. Whenever the vampires can go around, that's when he's locked out. He's crepuscular.
I don't know what that word means, but you just showed your Stanford degree right there.
I learned that from Archer.
Oh, really?
The little cat thing is crepuscular. He's crepuscular, and they shoot at him. But yes, that's the thing. It's so weird. It's so weird. This is exactly the kind of thing that he would tweet out from his own personal account. It's very weird.
So blatant, so apparent irony whenever a Republican congressman or a vice president or the president, Donald Trump, comes out and says, man, we're so pro-life, we're on board with life, except, I mean, not to restate a cliche, but Republicans don't really give a shit about you once you're out of the womb, apparently. Because, like, right up to that point, they're like, oh my God, we need to preserve these values. We need to make sure that, you know, babies are not dying left and right because Hillary Clinton wanted to abort fetuses the day before the pregnancy was, you know, the day before the baby was about to pop out, basically. But then, once the baby's out, fuck them.
This is very selective tea leaf reading. That's what happens after elections. Very selective tea leaf reading. Essentially, what he's trying to say is at the end of the election, having Donald Trump win the election, that means that the mandate of the pro-life movement is so strong that the entire nation is behind him. Now, what it is everyone's job to do is to point out how ridiculous that is. The Marist poll that just recently came out said that, you know, the only subsection, the only generation that favors pro-life over pro-choice is people 69 and over.
Right.
Now, the rest of the country and just a straight-up majority of living, breathing human beings believe in the pro-choice movement.
So I'll give you even more numbers on that, because there have been various polls that kind of look into this issue, and conservatives would have you believe that the majority of Americans are actually against reproductive rights, but that is not the case. Now, Quinnipiac, which is not known to be a liberal organization whatsoever, did a poll. This is one of the more recent polls that happened. And what they found was that 70% of voters agree with the Supreme Court's 1973 ruling in Roe v. Wade, which essentially legalized abortion in the country. 70%. And so what you saw in the Women's March was I'm not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of women. No, wait, no, millions. It was 2.9 billion, right? Or
millions.
something. Yeah,
750 in Los Angeles alone was the estimation.
So I was thinking about the Los Angeles protest alone.
I think you were thinking about Trump's inauguration speech when you said tens of thousands.
Probably.
That's what happened,
Probably. It's
Fake
hard to
news.
remember all these numbers.
Yeah, go ahead.
But okay, so the reason why I'm bringing the Women's March back into this story is because you literally had millions of men and women marching to protect all sorts of things, but reproductive rights were among the many things, right? Funny enough, there were, of course, lots of different chants, like my body, my choice was one of them. And then people would stop chanting after a while because it kind of gets repetitive. And so we came up with a chant, and it was, don't be a wussy, power to the pussy. And no one wanted to chant with us. But anyway, sorry for that side note.
I think that's pretty good.
It is good. It's fun. It's powerful.
Don't be. I was afraid to say pussy later, and I changed it to wuss instead of puss.
Yeah.
Because I was afraid, but now I'm very empowered.
Now
Thank you.
you're
At
empowered.
least no one chanted along with you, but I support you.
So those protests were gigantic. This one, there was a decent turnout. A couple thousand people got together to voice their opinion. But
there are dozens of us.
But
Dozens.
the difference,
No, there was a
let me
big
finish
chunk.
my point. But what you see there is honestly like a symbol of what's happening in the country when it comes to this debate, right? You have the Women's March with millions of people wanting to protect reproductive rights, and then you have the pro-life movement, or I like to call anti-choice movement, and you have a way, way smaller group of people. And here's the thing. Your religious morals are fine as long as you don't allow those, or we don't have a system of government that dictates our lives based on one group's religious morals.
Right, I get it, but there's still like an implicit moral code in the law. And so these people are saying, regardless of my religious belief, I believe that life begins at conception, whatever. The fact is, it's legal to do all the stuff that Planned Parenthood does. And if you look at Pence's statement, it is very carefully worded. It's trying to get a wedge in and separate it. He said, I don't want, Trump is the first person who says we're going to make it illegal for federal money to go to abortion, which, as Anna points out, has already happened. The next thing he says is, and abortion providers. And that's where he's trying to get in.
Yes.
And these are, Planned Parenthood, like 97% of what they do is women's health oriented.
Yes.
Just things like pap smears and general health care for women who can't find it anywhere else. Here's the problem. If you eliminate the funding to Planned Parenthood, it's going to be harder for women in general to find the kind of health care they need, especially when the next looming initiative that Trump has laid out for America is
defunding
to
Obamacare.
defund and, replace, if we have time, Obamacare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not even about having time. They don't really have an interest in replacing Obamacare. They haven't shared any ideas. The only idea that they have shared was, maybe we will have some of these health savings accounts that'll be pre-taxed. And yeah.
Good luck affording one of those.
Yeah, that's not a healthcare plan, and it's certainly not robust. But different states are doing more to restrict abortion. So Congress, this has something to do with the federal level as well. Congress has already begun moving anti-abortion legislation. On Tuesday, the House approved a bill sponsored by Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey that would prohibit using subsidies or tax credits provided through the Affordable Care Act to buy health insurance that covers abortion. So stop that for a second. It's not, you would use those tax credits to pay for your abortion. You're not allowed to use those tax credits toward an insurer that covers abortion. So think about that. Think about what their arguments were when President Barack Obama was trying to get Obamacare approved. Look, he wants to get in between you and your doctor. This is, government overreach. We can't have that. But they just want to tell you what you can spend your money on or what you can spend your tax credits on and what insurance is okay and what insurance isn't okay. It's insane. So let me give you more. So he, the representative who wants this signed into law, said the House would next take up legislation sponsored by Representative Trent Franks of Arizona to ban abortion after the fetus is able to feel pain, which advocates say happens 20 weeks after fertilization. So that is something that we've seen done on a state level, and now our members of Congress want to do it on a federal level. So I'm concerned because you have places like Texas that have already severely restricted abortion, and now they're going to go much further on the federal level.
Unconstitutionally so, up to this point at least.
Up to this point.
We'll see what happens with the new Supreme Court justice. But see, look, okay, Brett, you're a much smarter person than me.
Yes, that's true.
I want to ask you this question. Maybe you have a better answer for it. I just simply do not understand why, like, what the financial or otherwise incentives that Republican congressmen might have as far as restricting reproductive services. Like, if we know that it's an unpopular thing, why are they so adamant about getting this across? Is it simply to just make it seem like they're doing something?
I don't know in each individual one. I think it's part of any given conservative person's coalition is a pro-life arm, and so paying back to them. It's also an applause line. It seems pretty clearly within the platform. And there's a large proportion of the population that is in favor of restrictions on abortion. That goes anything from not 8 months in, that's a restriction on abortion. And I think a lot of reasonable people look at it and say, whether you agree with them or not, I think there's a lot of reasonable people who say there should be some restriction on abortion. But that's a conversation to have after the Supreme Court has said, listen, you can't make it illegal.
We are the watchers on the wall. We are the sword in the darkness. Come join us. tytnetwork.com/join.